Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, how are we doing? We've completed the work we needed to do on this left-hand column here. That's looking good. And now we need to turn our attention to this sidebar on the right. Currently it contains nothing other than a paragraph. So the first step, I suppose, as usual, is to go and flesh it out with some more suitable markup. So let's head back into our code editor and start straight away. Now the first thing we're going to do, this is what we're focusing our attention on, the first thing we're going to do is make things a little more semantic. We have it currently marked up as a div, but these days with the reign of HTML5 we'd be far better off calling it an aside. As it's part of the page, it's relevant to what the page is about, but it's not of primary concern, so it has its own sort of subsection on the side. You can these days use aside to effectively mean subsection, subcolumn, if you wish. Now, having done that, what I'm now going to do is remove this paragraph for kickoff. It's difficult to know exactly how I should be describing each of the sections within the sidebar. They're not sections, although maybe they are sections. I don't think so. I think they're probably too small to be considered sections. Although a section is an area of the website with its own title, so that could arguably be a section we're looking at there. They're not really articles. For the time being, I'm just going to use a div. When in doubt, use a div, but maybe that's worth some discussion in the comments. So anyway, we have a div, and each div I'm going to give a class of sub, which is going to identify it as part of our subsection, and each one I'm going to give separate classes to identify them later on. So the first one, I may as well put it in now to save me going back. First one I'm calling subscribe, and I'm going to give it a clear fix as well, just so any future floats within it, because there are future floats within that, can be dealt with. So that's going to be the end of our subscribe, and that's going to contain a header element, and the header of course has within it an h4, in this case called subscribe. Now you remember back to the styling we carried out in the footer, which is why we had the header wrapped around the headings, and that was in order to apply that diagonal stripe effect. We're going to be doing that again on these ones, of course. So that's the basic premise of our subsection. So I'm going to need to do copy and paste a few of these. The next one down on the list is our search. So stick a search in there, or whatever I've just typed. Search. I don't need a clear fix on that because I'm going to contain a form within there. Nothing complex, which we'll deal with in a moment. Actually, I may as well just do it now. I'm being lazy. Sorry about that. Form. We'll give that a class of search, and I'll clear any of the objects within that. Now, of course, I'm using markup for the form, which is provided with the skeleton boilerplate. As we've discussed, there aren't many styles catered for with the skeleton, not like Twitter's Bootstrap or anything, but there are some form styles, so I'm literally using the suggested markup and styling for skeleton form elements. We'll give this a placeholder and a value of nothing. So that's our form input, and then we're going to want a button, which is a submit button. It says search. Now that's all going to be styled for us with the generic skeleton styling, so that's cool. Alright, that's our search dealt with. Underneath the search we had our sponsors, the images for which I will have to get later. There we go, no form in there, and we'll go and get the images later. Alright, after our sponsors we had most popular. So we'll alter the heading. Most popular. Now, according to our finished, of course these are the tabs. This is where our tabs are going to go. Alright, fair enough. We'll have a look at those in a minute. For the time being we'll skip on to the next one, which is, let's make sure I update my labels, my comments, so I know what I'm doing. Let's see, this one's going to be magazine news. Fat fingers today. Magazine news, and call that news, and that was another form, of course. Yep. So that can be a question of copying and pasting our existing search form, because it looks identical. We'll give it a different couple of values, using a different type of input. Of course, it's an email type input, whereas the other was a search type input. And this is going to say subscribe, quite simply. Alright, so that's for subscribing to a newsletter or something. Next we have our categories section. On we go. Doesn't make for very entertaining viewing, I imagine, so feel free to just skip over this bit if you wish. Now we're going to use the same principle that we used previously with our nesting columns. We want two columns within our category section to house, each one to house an unordered list. So of course we need an alpha and an omega column, like so. Okay, and then we want an unordered list within that, UL with a class of category, where am I, category, there we go, categories, too much typing, okay, and then some list items typically filled with anchors with generic rubbish. Okay, and then we want a second list, some more things. Like so. Now we're nearly there. We have just one more subsection. That was our cats there. Okay, so one more, which is ultimately going to be quite interesting. I can see there I still have to update my columns. That was Amiga, of course. Okay, so our last one is not categories, it's going to be video. And this is going to be video of the week, like so. Now this is going to contain a figure within which we're going to have our flexible video. But for the time being, we're not actually going to put the video in because it will mess up our layout in the short term. So for now, just be happy with a fig caption, another of the optional elements you can place within a figure element, and I'm going to copy and paste the video information that I will be using. That, believe it or not, is it. So happily we've finished our typing, and I'll bring back our design so far, which looks a little bit like this, which upon first glance would suggest I've made a mistake in the markup, because it looks to be broken in some way. There looks to be an issue with the sponsors. So we go back to our sponsors. Header, no, that looks fine. That's because there's an additional closing tag for a search element there. So sorry about that. Save that. Okay, that looks a little more favourable. It's all contained within the in the sidebar, so that's good. Now on some styling. There's quite some styling to do. You'll see that here we have the native skeleton form element styling, which is fine. But with me being in a WebKit browser, Chrome, our input of type search has taken on some WebKit styling of its own, which we're going to need to counteract in a minute. So first things first, we'll get these headings done. They need to be similar to the headings that we used in our footer, if you remember. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Now at the bottom of our styles, I'm going to add a sidebar, like so. That's our little aside. And let me see, what did we have first? We had our headers. So we're talking about the divs with sub and the header. Now they have a background applied to them. Again, you can refer back to a previous video for the precise description of exactly what I'm doing here. But what I am doing is giving the header element and the diagonal stripe background, and then I'm going to blank it out within the H2 inside it. So we apply a font size of 14 pixels, a line height of 14 pixels, which I can express as 1 EM as well, and a margin sticking to our baseline grid like so. So that gives us our diagonal background on all our headings, which is nice. Seems to be an issue there as well, so we'll take that. That must be a clearing issue, I imagine. Okay, we'll have a look at that in a minute. And then we need the sub header. Let's see, font weight of bold. We want a color of, let's reassert the font size just to be sure, and the line height. Text transform of uppercase. Background is going to have to be the same as the overall body's background. Images, background, main ping. Repeat that. Keep hitting red. Repeat that and then give it a base like so. We'll display them in line. Keep jumping the gun on the code hints there, sorry. Padding left and right, a margin on the bottom, on the left, sorry, to give that extra little bit of stripiness to the left hand side. A slightly larger letter spacing because we're dealing with uppercase characters, and let's just make sure that our font family is Arial, like so. Save that, and that hasn't worked at all. And the reason is I forgot to point out that we're actually looking at H4 headers. Alright. Okay, so that's fine. I will have to deal with this in a little bit. That must be just a clear fix issue. So if I go down to our categories, I need to make sure that this particular section is clearing these two columns within it. Excellent. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, there's quite a bit to pay attention to. So the next thing I want to be doing, let's see. I'm going to do these form elements now. I mentioned the search box, which has takes on some WebKit styling. I can point you to an article by a guy called Glyn Mooney, and he goes over how to reset all those particular styles. This is it. I'll put the URL at the bottom of the screencast so you can go and check it out yourself. In the meantime, I'm just going to copy and paste the various things that he says, like so. First of all, let's add some form styling. Okay, there we are. I've put the URL in there as well. They basically point to input with the type of search and remove all these extra additional WebKit properties, giving them all displays of none. So that removes those strange rounded corners and the glowing and the icon and such. So that's taken care of that. If we now open it up, you'll see that it's taken on a more standard appearance, but it hasn't adopted the rest of the styling, as have all the other inputs. That's because Skeleton doesn't cater for a specific type of search, which is a shame. So let's make sure that we cater for that as well. In order to find out exactly what's going on with our search field, we're going to have to open up the base CSS for our Skeleton framework. Looking at the table of contents, you can see that forms are all the way down at the bottom, so we'll shoot off down there, past the button styling, past the tabs, and here we have our forms. Now we can see that our email inputs are catered for as our passwords and text. It would be quite awkward to duplicate all of this once again. We could do, of course, in a similar vein to our baseline styling that we've repeated. So you can either copy the relevant rules and add them for the search fields, or we can simply add them in here, which is actually what I'm going to do for the time being. So we'll make sure that our search inputs are catered for along with all the other types, like so. It's quite simple. And going back into our browser, you'll see that indeed our search input now looks like our email input. Okay, so next on the list is would perhaps be wise to style our categories. So we'll go back into, ditch this base CSS now, we'll go back into our layout CSS, and let's see. I'm going to grab the styling for all the categories. Okay, there it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is add category styling at the bottom here. Making sure there are no typos. First thing I'll do is remove margin from the UL. Then I'm going to point out the list items themselves. They don't want any margin either. I just want a border on the bottom. 1 pixel dashed E5, E5, E5. Now we want the anchors themselves. Get rid of any text decoration. I want a line height of 35 pixels and display them as block so they're nice and clickable. Last thing will be a hover state to indicate that they're being hovered over, simply with a background of. And as an indication, it's always perhaps a nice idea for touchscreen devices to include an active state, so that when they're being pressed by the finger, they also take on a sort of what's effectively a hover state. Okay, so that should have dealt with that, and they're looking a lot neater. Very subtle hover state, but perfectly clear. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is let's take a look at our existing design. Okay, we have these tabs, we have our subscription. I'll tell you what, let's figure out this subscription thing here. That's quite a good idea. So the first thing we'll do is add some layout, add some markup, sorry. Now I want, where are we, to our subscribe area. The first thing I'm going to do is add another div. In much the same way as I've been nesting other divs. So we're going to have one on the left and one on the right. And there's the omega. And then within our first column, I want a span, which I'm going to give a class of icon, because I want it to be an icon. I'm going to style it that way. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a moment. For the time being, I'm going to add a paragraph with an EM with some random number. Show how many RSS subscriptions there are. Put a line break in there, and that's where the subscribers are going to go. Now we're going to copy and paste this into the second column. This is going to be the Twitter icon and some other random number, and a little label down here like so. Now if we, and that's a basic layout which looks fine, some styling missing there, but if you look at our existing design, we've got these which are icons, but they've been added using fonts, which makes them flexible, and it's quite convenient. So we first need to go and grab the web font in order to implement these. So head over to Web Symbols, the Just Be Nice Studio. Here they are. You'll want to go and download the font pack in a zip, is for if you want to install the fonts to your system for use in Photoshop or whatever. And we have the actual web pack here. Sorry, that's the other way around. We want the zip file in order to apply the fonts to our website. So first thing we're going to do is grab the package. We're going to be given various formats. I'm firstly going to add a folder with fonts, and then I'll add second folder in order to house our web directory fonts. So I'll just expand my font pack. Here we go. I don't need all of these files. All I really need are the font files themselves. True typeface, the SVG. I don't need the HTML. That caters for all the browsers that we'll need. So we'll plonk those in our web symbols folder there. Now we can either include the CSS that comes with the package, or we can simply include this font face rule within our own CSS, which we'll do now. So right at the very top, underneath any reset rules, I'm going to add my font face. It's going to be called Web Symbols Regular. You can call this whatever you like. That's how we're going to be referring to it in the rest of our style sheets. And all these paths are relative to the CSS file. So we need to make sure that this points properly to all the font formats that we're using here. Now we've put them in a directory called Web Symbols within our fonts folder. So we just have to make sure that we're pointing to the correct paths, and these are the various files that we need to point to. So that's taken care of. Now we need to make sure that we style our icons appropriately. Now they're just characters, just like any other character on a web page, and you can see here on the web symbols site what each character looks like with this font face applied. We need an RSS symbol. Here we have some social network icons, so we'll use this symbol here, which is a lowercase r, and the Twitter icon, which is a lowercase t. So that's the content that we need to put into our markup. So our RSS symbol is going to be the letter R, and our Twitter is going to be the letter T. And now we just need to apply that font family to any class of icon. So I'll go back and grab it again so I don't have to rely on typing. And down at the bottom here, underneath our categories, I'm going to place a little section called icons, and to that I apply our font family. Now I'm going to make sure they're slightly bigger, so I'll give those a size of 28 pixels and a line height of equal size. So we'll just check and see if that's taken effect. It was this one. Okay, so that's worked perfectly. That's our letter R, and that's our little character, our lowercase t. So now we need to add some more styling in order to get things looking like this, but that's the brunt of the work in any case. So now what we're going to do is style the spans within subscribe, and I'm going to make them 30 pixels wide. I'm going to float them left. Then there's the paragraph within that as well. That obviously needs styling too. So we'll style that at 70%, sorry. Float it right. Make sure there are no margins applied so everything fits properly. And I'm going to give that font family of Georgia and serif there. Lastly, we have subscribe. We have the EMs, which we want to give a slightly larger font size, and remove the italicized styling from that by stating that it's normal. Alright, so that's basic styling. Now I've removed any margin from the bottom of my subscribe, which is incorrect. I did that because I wanted to remove. Let's just see what's how this sits at the top here. My header, yes, that should still have a margin. So I should only have removed the margin at the top of that. So where did I do that? That will have been when I was right here. Subscribe header. I only wanted to remove the margin at the top. Alright, excellent. The last thing remains to be done is to change the colour of those two particular icons, which I will do at the very bottom there. Simply change the font colour of each one, and that completes the styling for our little subscription sections. Okay, we've also done our search and our magazine news subscription little forms. We've done the categories. So now what remains to be done is the most popular tabs, our little sponsor images, and of course the flexible video. And we'll do that in the next video.